So this one is pretty interesting. Guys, I've told you how I felt about Khanna. And recently, Khanna had an interview. Part of that interview was in reference to the Democrats and where do they go from here. And part of that interview was in reference to censorship. Now I'm going to play the first part first, which is him actually responding to a comment that AOC made. So AOC had another interview. Surprise, surprise. AOC's warning for Democrats, we're in trouble. Here we go. I'm just going to jump straight to the point here. As a young member of Congress, the first vote I ever cast was for Barack Obama, who was called a socialist and all this stuff. All of this rhetoric that we can see today has been the political reality my entire life. And so I never felt a nostalgia for something that never existed in my lifetime. I feel our politics has fundamentally changed. I'm going to make this a little bit larger for the people in the back. For the people in the back. Has fundamentally changed, whether it's for better or for worse, is people's determination. I don't know what's going on tonight. Sorry, guys. But I was never under the illusion that we can bring Manchin along. Now I'm going to scroll down here. I have the utmost respect and confidence in the president, but I just felt like we called two different plays on this one. I think that there is a sense among more senior members of Congress who have been around in different political times that we can get back to this time of buddy and backslapping, and we'll cut a deal and go into a room with some bourbon and some smoke, and you'll come out and work something out. I think there's a real nostalgia and belief that that time still exists, or that we can get back to that. But those days, she says, have been over for a long time. And the fact that Biden and others don't realize it could spell disaster in the fall's elections. With Biden's low approval numbers and the historic tendency of the president's party to lose, on average, 26 House seats in the midterms, the Democrats face an uphill battle to keep control of Congress. This is AOC. We need to acknowledge that this isn't just about middle of the road, an increasingly narrow band of independent voters. I'm going to comment on that in just a second. This is really about the collapse of support among young people among the Democratic base who are feeling that they worked overtime to get this president elected and aren't necessarily being seen. Let me come out for just a second. I want to discuss that. I don't think she needs to downplay the number of independent voters. And I'm going to tell you why. The number of independent voters has increased since Joe Biden took office. Not making this up. I've gone over those stats on this channel multiple times. Those numbers have increased since Joe Biden took office. Independents in Arizona are the ones that helped Biden win Arizona. Independents. So I really wish that Republicans, Democrats, whatever you want to call yourself today, would stop downplaying the number of independents in this country. A lot of times, independents are often ignored. But you just saw how the 2020 election, how independents helped Joe Biden win a state that otherwise would have gone to Trump. Independents did that. And they are among the group that is now disapproving of Joe Biden's job as president. So I don't like her downplaying and saying a narrow band of, it's not a narrow band of independent voters. It's not as small as people think. I just want to point that out. The other part that's mentioned here, this is really about a collapse of support among young people among the Democratic base who feel they worked overtime to get this president elected. So there were a number of young people who came out and supported Joe Biden. That was more so, again, a vote against Trump, not so much a vote for Joe Biden. But I think AOC here is missing the overall picture. She's missing the big picture here. She's pointing out young voters. She's talking about independents as this narrow group. The problem that we face, or actually that they face, the Democrats, the majority of Americans do not vote. If they're really trying to win, those are the people they should be really trying to reach out to. I'll say it again. The majority of Americans do not vote. And yes, she's right about young people being upset, but it's not just young people who are pissed at Joe Biden. You have older people who are pissed at him too. People are not happy. But what is she leaving out in this discussion? The economy. The economy is the number one reason. I went over the poll numbers the other day. The number one concern for Americans in that poll was the economy. It's just a reality. Let me go back in and then I'm going to go to the video. So it goes on to say, let me take this down for a second. If the president does pursue and start to govern decisively using executive action and other tools at his disposal, I think we're in the game. No, you're still not in the game. I'll comment on that in a second. But if we decide to just kind of sit back for the rest of the year and not change people's lives, yeah, I do think we're in trouble. Okay, just sit back and not change people's lives. But wasn't AOC doing the same thing? The number of times that her and the rest of the squad could have made decisions when it came to voting for legislature and AOC decided to go along with the Democratic establishment. She's talking about Joe Biden doing this, but she was doing exactly what Biden wanted her to do. And it was just a couple months ago that AOC was going on all these different talk shows telling people that Joe Biden was doing a great job. So, yes, there are things that Joe Biden can do by executive order, but let's go back. Let's go all the way back to force the vote. If you really want to talk about changing people's lives, AOC, why did you and the rest of the squad members not force the vote for Medicare for all? You want to talk about something that would have greatly changed people's lives? Giving everybody health care in this country. You didn't want to do it because that's not what the party wanted. And you wanted to be friends with people. All of them. All of them. And for people to say, well, they didn't have the votes and it wouldn't have worked and yada, yada. Whatever. It would have showed the Americans who those people really were. We would have been able to see all of their names, every one of them that voted against it. And you would know not to vote for them again. And then maybe, just maybe, that would have been enough frustration and anger to get everybody out in the streets and go to DC and protest in front of the White House. But we'll never know because it never happened. When you want to talk about something that would have greatly changed everyone's lives in this country, giving everybody health care during a pandemic should have been the number one thing. But AOC, like the rest of the squad, they wanted to be friends with Nancy Pelosi. That's the problem. Now, I do agree with what she said here about the younger people. Yeah, younger people are pissed. A lot of people are pissed. Let me show you what Khanna said to this statement. This is going to show you just how out of touch Khanna is. Thank you for the super chat, Troy. My almost 80-year-old friend from Detroit watches CNN and MSDNC all day long and thinks that if Dems lose next elections, then it will be due to Republicans cheating, not because both parties suck. Sigh. Oh, Troy, you got to educate them. You got to educate them, man. I know it's frustrating. Let's hear what Ro Khanna had to say about this. Now, I want to give a shout out, of course, to Case Study QB. He's always doing fantastic work. Thanks so much for this clip here, Case. Listen to this, you guys. If this doesn't frustrate you, oh boy. Here we go.
The November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in recent days that she thinks that the Democratic Party is in trouble because of the president. Listen to what she said.
This is really about the collapse in support among young people, among the Democratic base, feeling like they are not, that they worked overtime to get this president elected, and they aren't necessarily being seen.
Is she right?
The president has done an extraordinary job. We've passed the American Rescue Plan. We've passed infrastructure. Here's the biggest thing we ought to highlight. $20 billion Intel is investing in Ohio. You talk about the revitalization of the Midwest. We're delivering. Let's pass the CHIPS Act, get it to the president. Of course, there are other things we ought to do, but this president has met the moment in very difficult circumstances.
Americans might disagree with you. His approval rating is only 40% in the latest Reuters Ipsos poll. Just before we go, I want to ask you, in terms of the November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said.
So Ro Khanna just told you that Joe Biden has met the moment. Did you guys hear that? Listen.
The Midwest, we're delivering. Let's pass the CHIPS Act, get it to the president. Of course, there are other things we ought to do, but this president has met the moment in very difficult circumstances.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the circumstances weren't difficult, But I'll be damned if I would have gone on Fox News and said to everyone that Joe Biden has met the moment. He has not met the moment. Is meeting the moment kicking people off of unemployment? I don't think so. Do you think so? What did he meet the moment on? Of course, he's going to bring up the American Rescue Act. Didn't really rescue people, if you ask me. I said this before. If people were already struggling financially, they were a couple months behind, you give them a check, take this little bit of money. That's a temporary solution. It is just a Band-Aid. So no, he didn't really meet the moment on the American Rescue Act either. And I wish they didn't even call it that, because that wasn't a rescue per se. Joe Biden couldn't even give people the $2,000 stimulus checks. He tried to shortchange Americans on that. And who exactly did he help, Ro Khanna? Yes, I know there was the child tax credit, but that was only for people who had kids. And then they took it away. So Jeremy said, I must have missed the rescue. So how did he meet the moment? People still don't have a living wage. They didn't increase the minimum wage. Thousands of people are unemployed. There's still no health care for everyone in this country. Ro Khanna quickly went to bat to defend Joe Biden. And pay close attention to him. Because I told you, I did a story before where they were already talking about they wanted Ro Khanna, Bernie's campaign, wants Ro Khanna to run in 2024. And Ro Khanna said he doesn't want to run in 2024, but he is considering 2028. That is why you keep seeing him on TV. That's why you're seeing him so often. So he's doing everything he can to try to simp for Joe Biden and take up for Joe Biden because he's the chosen one. I want to remind everyone that Ro Khanna is one of the politicians that says that he's progressive. I'm a progressive. You should follow him on Twitter, by the way. It's quite interesting and very funny. If you want some comedy, I'm progressive. Ro Khanna, who takes thousands and thousands of dollars from Silicon Valley. So deep enriched in the tech industry. Ro Khanna. You got to watch out for him. Keep an eye on this one, you guys. Keep a close eye on Ro Khanna. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then I'm going to show you the next clip, which is also concerning about him as well. Thank you so much for the super chat. The Traveler. Bernie Sanders is set to reintroduce Medicare for all soon. Midterms are around the corner. And of course, Bernie isn't going to fight to put it up for a vote. So yes, I did know about that as well. And again, the traveler is right. See how they only want to, let's really push this now because the midterms, we got to think about the midterms. We got to make sure Democrats keep their seats this year. If they were that passionate about Medicare for all, again, like I said, why didn't they try to force the vote? All this theater. They only seem to want to be for an issue when it's time to get reelected, when they feel they're about to lose a couple of seats. Because last year, we were keeping count of how many members of the squad, Bernie Sanders, how often they were tweeting about Medicare for all, and they had pretty much stopped talking about it. Cori Bush told you herself when Max Blumenthal interviewed her at that Capitol protest for the evictions. He asked her, why didn't you force the vote? Cori Bush's response was, that's Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. But you ran on it. All of them ran on it. Were you thinking about that then? It didn't matter back then when you were running for election that it was Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. That was just an excuse. So you see what I'm saying? So pay close attention to Twitter, because in about a month or so, you're going to see all of them. All of a sudden, they're going to be tweeting about Medicare for all again. When just a couple of months ago, they were calling it access to health care. It's ridiculous. What a clown show. What a fucking clown show. Thanks so much for the super chat, Troy. I introduced my friend to your channel and to some videos of RBN, and he's slow to come around, but his brother is more radical, trying to promote RBN. Thank you so much, Troy. That's really sweet of you. Thanks so much for the super chat, Ashura. See how fast Roe started talking to defend Biden? Jumped right in. Let me go ahead and defend the boss man. Go ahead and jump in and save Joe. That's how it works. That's how it works. Now, that was the only thing that Khanna said. He was also questioned about social media. Listen to this. And I want you to pay close attention to how he contradicts his statement. Listen to this. Again, Joe Biden, 40% approve. Thanks to Case Study QB for this clip as well. Here we go. The topic is social media. Listen to what he says. Remember, he is pretty much owned by the tech industry. Just keep that in mind.
Everybody's yelling at each other, and much of the reason why they're yelling at each other is because of social media. Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech, and they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress.
Boom. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. He said that, well, yes, social media should not have hate speech. They should also have free speech. And then he goes on to say, yes, there needs to be more regulations on social media. The what? Did anybody else hear that? Somebody, please explain that to me. Please explain that to me. That doesn't make any sense. If you say that you shouldn't have such and such, such and such, and such and such, but you say that they should allow for free speech, then you come back and say, yes, there should be more restrictions on social media. Which is it? If you believe that social media should allow free speech, see, this is where I get people on the free speech one. This is the thing about censorship that a lot of people, they don't want to admit to this, but I'm sorry, but it's true. If you say that you're anti-censorship, to me, that means everything. That means everything. If you say you're a free speech absolutist, to me, That means everything, everything. So how are you going to say that social media needs to allow for free speech, but then you just mention the things that social media should not allow? Then you come back and say, yeah, there should be more restrictions on social media. Did anybody catch that? Remember who his donors are. Tech. Thanks for the comment on Rockfin Jean. Wife and him stocks in military weapon companies. Yes.
Political discourse in this country has sunk to new lows. Everybody's yelling at each other, and much of the reason why they're yelling at each other is because of social media. Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech. And they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress.
I'm done. Like that didn't make any sense. That didn't make any sense to me. Need to allow more free speech, but they need to be regulated.